Good evening. Okay, it's 7 o'clock, so I think I will go ahead and get started. People will be joining as we go on here. Supervisor Palchik will probably be joining us later in the meeting and so we may stop and allow her to make some opening remarks to the meeting at that point. But I'll go ahead and get started here. This is the Hunters Branch Office Complex Plan Amendment, second community meeting. So the agenda for tonight is we'll just do some brief introductions of staff who are presenting. We'll talk about where we are in the process, briefly review what the comprehensive plan is again, and go into some background of the existing conditions, where the site is located, et cetera. Then we'll review the analysis from the staff report that was published on the 19th of this month, and then go over the transportation analysis results, and then review the staff recommendation as published in the staff report, and review the upcoming next steps in the process, and then open it up for questions. So I'm Aaron Kleibanner with the Department of Planning and Development. I'm accompanied by Graham Owen, also with DPD, and then Kyle Kelly from the Department of Transportation will be giving a presentation as well. Just some housekeeping things at the bottom of your screen. You have your controls for muting and unmuting your microphone and your video. At the end, we please ask you to use the raise your hand button. I'm sorry, this screen is from another application. But at the bottom of the screen, you'll see a raise your hand button. So when you want to ask a question, please use that, and then we'll go to each person. All right. So we are in the very beginning of the development review process with the comprehensive plan amendment. As you can see here, this is what we call the land development wheel, and we're in the green section here. So the comprehensive plan is a guide that reflects the community's long-term vision for land use vision in the county. And the plan is used by the Planning Commission, the Board of Supervisors, the community, and staff to make decisions about changes in the use of property. The plan is dynamic. We're updating it continually. And the plan amendment process involves extensive community engagement with many stakeholders. So what's the difference between comprehensive planning and zoning? The comprehensive plan, again, is a goal and it contains recommendations. It has general policies about land use, transportation, the environment, heritage resources, et cetera. It has general land use categories and density and intensity ranges, talking about the quantity of development. But the zoning ordinance is the law. It's the body of body of regulations that implements the comprehensive plan recommendations. Includes regulations about the types of land uses, requirements such as setbacks, building heights, open space, etc. And it's organized into districts on the zoning map. And so that's that. So the board authorized the consideration of this plan amendment on April 23rd, in April of 2023, excuse me, and it was what we call a Tier 3 on the Comprehensive Plan Work Program. That means a study that's waiting for other steps to be taken before we start working on it. At the time, and I'll go over this in a later slide, it was reauthorized again in November of 2023 and moved up to Tier 1 to the active review. And it was authorized for a residential or mixed-use development up to a certain density here, 65 to 80 dwelling units per acre. Other considerations were included adaptive reuse, possibility of adaptive reuse of the existing office buildings, or redeveloping the entire site. Connections to the Vienna Metro Rail station and surrounding uses were other priorities. So these are the existing site conditions. Again, this is located at the corner of Nutley Street and north of Route 29. Um, and the 14-acre subject area is known again as the Hunters Branch Office Complex. It's developed with two 12-story office buildings totaling 444,000 square feet, served by two parking structures, and it is an approximately 7 to 10 minute walk from the Vienna Metro Rail platform, which can be accessed by foot on Hunters Glen Way. However, much of the site frontage on Hunters Glen Way is missing a sidewalk. The Hunters Branch tributary runs through the eastern side of the site from south to north and provides a wooded stream valley with walking trails, including a tunnel under Hermosa Drive. Also, there are footings for a pedestrian bridge over the stream. Um, okay. To the east across Nutley Street are single-family detached homes in the Briarwood neighborhood. To the south is the Pan Am Shopping Center and other drive-through retail uses and single-family attached homes in the Metro Row development. To the west are multifamily uses, and to the north are multifamily uses and wooded land. So the Vienna Transit Station area is one of 14 mixed-use centers around the county's Metro Rail stations. These are planned to develop in a manner that is compatible with surrounding uses and to provide transit-focused housing and employment locations. The site is located within the Vienna TSA area, which is recommended as, again, several one of the mixed-use centers. It's located in Land Unit A of the transit station area. The adopted base plan recommends multifamily residential uses and office uses up to a 0.50 floor area ratio. There is also an option for elderly housing, elderly care facilities, hotel motel use, and health and elderly uh, care facilities. The existing office buildings were constructed, however, prior to the addition of this plan guidance, and so precluded the development of these other optional uses that I just mentioned. The recommendations for multifamily residential uses was implemented with the construction of the surrounding apartments that border the site. The proposed plan amendment has two options. Option A includes two multifamily buildings for a total of 800 dwelling units and 800,000 square feet of development. The proposed density would be about 57.6 dwelling units per acre and a 1.31 floor area ratio. The larger of the existing parking structures would be retained to serve the proposed residential use. And the existing resource protection area, floodplain, and stream valley are proposed to be preserved and programmed as a passive recreation area. Publicly accessible uh, parks are planned. Um, and then there will also be additional open spaces throughout the site to serve residents of the new development. Option B proposes one multifamily building with approximately 450 dwelling units and 76 stacked townhomes for up to 536 total dwelling units and 615,900 square feet of total development. This would be a proposed density of 37.8 dwelling units per acre and 1.01 floor area ratio. Option B includes the same features for parking and open spaces as option A. So For the staff report analysis, land use analysis section, the policy plan land use element recommends highest development intensities located near uh, areas of transportation advantage, such as the transit station areas, excuse me. Compact pedestrian-oriented mixed-use communities, transit-oriented development within a half mile of the metro station. Both options are compatible with the surrounding area and this guidance, but option A is more consistent with county goals for transit station areas. Both rental and for sale workforce dwelling units should also be provided. Land units A, C, and G include mixed use recommendations in the transit station area, but only residential uses have been developed for the two office buildings in Land Unit A. Land Unit C, otherwise known as Metro West, was approved for mixed use development, but only residential components have been developed. And the Fairfax Economic Development Authority did a study of office vacancies throughout the county, and it indicated that the Vienna office submarket is has one of the highest vacancy rates in the county, and is unlikely to see any increase in leased space in the future. Uh, Increased residential population in the transit station area will need access to retail, services, and amenities within walking distance. And so that means that inclusion of these non-residential uses is critical. For us, the permanency of the retail uses and serving the residential uses will also be critical in the review of the upcoming rezoning application. So other analysis that we got from our partner agencies for Parks and Recreation, the proposed plan would generate a need for 2.1 acres of on-site urban parkland. The parkland should be publicly accessible, visible, and centrally located, and that there should also be wayfinding signage for visibility from the surrounding neighborhoods. For the environmental analysis, again, there's the large resource protection area, floodplain, and environmental quality corridor that covers the eastern portion of the subject area. There is a proposed stream restoration project, county project, in the Accotink Creek Watershed Management Plan. The plan recommends stormwater management quality and quantity measures that exceed minimum code requirements to reduce runoff to good forested conditions. And there's an ongoing update to existing wastewater pipes that the Department of Public Works is doing. For public schools, option A was evaluated, the higher intensity option. And under the projections for the 2024 to 28 capital improvements program for schools, it would generate, the proposed plan would generate 22 high school students, 15 middle school students, and 49 elementary school students. And for heritage resources, the subject property is not in a historic overlay district, and it is not listed on the Fairfax County Inventory of Historic Sites, Virginia Landmarks Register, or Register of National Historic Places, but a Phase 2 architectural survey is recommended to evaluate the potential significance of the existing buildings. So now I will turn it over to Kyle Kelly from the Department of Transportation to go over the transportation impact results. And I see that Supervisor Palchik has joined us. I don't know if she would like to give some brief remarks before we go into transportation.
Sorry. Hi. Thank you, Aaron, having some technical issues. Just thank you so much for having me. Oh, good, you can hear me. Thank you for your work and Graham and Kyle and the entire team on this, but especially huge thank you to the community for your involvement and for joining us here tonight. And for all who have followed this planet and project and giving your input. What I've seen so far, and I haven't seen the latest, really is coming a long, long way to providing, I think, a lot of improvements, both for the connectivity, the environment, stream, and the safety for all users, especially our pedestrians, here in this very vibrant, corner of the county. So thank you so much and look forward to hearing the presentation.
Thank you, Supervisor Palchik. Okay, Kyle.
All right, I will go ahead and pull up my presentation. All right, can everybody see the slides? All right, so good evening, everybody. I'm Kyle Kelly. I am a transportation planner with the Fairfax County Department of Transportation. And this evening, we're going to talk a little bit about the results from the transportation analysis that was done for this plan amendment. So I wanted to start off just kind of introducing you all to what a transportation analysis involves and what's included in it. So we have what we call the comprehensive transportation analysis, and really the key word here is comprehensive. So in the past, a lot of these transportation analysis have been very vehicle focused and very much looking at cars and the movement of traffic and things of that nature. But with this new comprehensive transportation analysis, we're really also looking at a multimodal perspective. So that's going to include bikes, it's going to include pedestrians, transit, safety, and then also vehicles as well. So this is really a much broader and much more comprehensive way at looking at the transportation network and what the impacts are at a given site. So moving into why we do CTAs, so some of the reasons include comprehensive plan amendments. So that would be like this one here with Hunter's Branch. We have this site-specific plan amendment where we want to do the CTA to look and see what the transportation impacts are going to be of this particular change to the comprehensive plan. Then it'll also be used for zoning changes and then corridor studies as well, which would be looking at a segment of a roadway like Route 29, Route 50, things of that nature. So in terms of what's included in a CTA, again, we're looking at all the different modes of transportation and trying to ensure that we're looking at all those and making sure that there's no negative impacts for users of one type of transportation and really trying to take a balanced approach to how we look at the transportation network. So in terms of the analysis itself, there's a number of different measures that we're going to get into tonight, and I'll talk some about what those are and what some of the metrics are that we use when we're evaluating these different impacts to the transportation network. And then once the CTA is finished, after we've worked through the analysis, we're coming back and sharing our feedback with the community and then working with the other stakeholders to determine what the recommendations are going to be for the transportation network after the completion of the plan amendment. And then ultimately, those recommendations are going to be packaged together with the other land use recommendations that Aaron has gone over, which are published in the staff report that then go to the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors. And so this graphic here just gives you kind of another idea of, again, what we're looking at. So just some of the questions that we're thinking about as we work through this CTA analysis. So I wanted to start off just kind of going over what's in the current comprehensive plan. So our comprehensive plan includes transportation recommendations, and we do have a county-wide transportation plan map that shows what the proposed improvements are across county. And then if you go into the comprehensive plan, we have these more specific looks at certain planning sectors like the one that's shown here for Hunter's Branch. So this just gives a greater level of detail than what you get at the county-wide map when you're looking for everything across the county. So this is very specific to this small area here in this community planning sector. So again, these are transportation improvements that are recommended. There's not necessarily any funding that is tied with these. So there's no timeline in terms of when these facilities may be built. This is just a long-range recommendation that is in the plan there. So again, if you see something that doesn't necessarily mean it's getting built or is in the process of getting built, it's just a long-term planning goal that the county has for transportation. And we're going to get into the bike and pedestrian improvements a little bit later, which those are included in the bike master plan and the countywide trails plan, respectively. So looking at the map here on the right, you can see that there's a number of transportation improvements shown for mostly vehicular improvements. So if you look along Route 29, you'll see that there is a number 6 there, which means that that is proposed to be widened to 6 lanes, which that's bidirectional, so 3 lanes in each direction. And then it's the same thing if you look at Route 50, it also has a 6 there as well. And then you'll notice there's improvement shown for I-66. That was recently completed with the I-66 widening project that added the express lanes there along 66. And then there's also other improvements on the map that you'll see too, things that are specifically called out in the transit station area. You'll see that that area is kind of shaded out, and then there's additional language in the text that goes over some of those transportation recommendations in more detail. So that just kind of gives you an idea of what's in the plan and what's recommended in terms of transportation facilities. Okay, so moving into the bike master plan. So this is a plan that is really aimed at improving the safety for cyclists and then also creating a network that is connected of both on-road and off-road bicycling options. And so there's a variety of different facilities that are on the map, and you can see here in the legend that we have different things like a buffered bike lane, sharrows, which would be just markings on the road indicating that cyclists can use that space for biking. We have climbing lanes, shared roadways. You'll see the cycle tracks, shared use paths. So really, there's a lot of different facilities, and what the facility is really determined by the surrounding factors. So that could be land use, it could be what the road looks like currently. So there's a number of different things that go into determining what's going to be a bicycle facility for a particular segment. And one of the things that you'll notice is on this map here, it shows that Nutley Street is proposed to have sharrows. Now, that's something that's probably not going to happen because, again, there's been some shift recently and really thinking about bicycle safety, and we're thinking more about recommendations for back of curb, off the road improvements on these busier streets that have high traffic volumes and high speeds like Nutley Street. So on a street like Nutley Street, it's probably more likely that a shared use path that's off the road, back of curb would be a more appropriate facility there. And ultimately, a lot of these recommendations are going to be getting updated over the next year or so because we're working on a new plan called the Active Fairfax Plan, which both the Bike Master Plan and then the Trails Plan, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, are going to be incorporated into. And that plan is going to provide new recommendations, and it's going to be an updated version that's got kind of the best practices of the current times in there for bike and pedestrian and other active transportation modes. So moving to the trails plan, so you can see there's a number of facilities shown on here. So as part of the I-66 widening project, there was the I-66 parallel trail that was constructed, and that's shown on the map as a major regional trail system. So that's something that was just recently put in place for pedestrians and really for cyclists to use as well. And then you'll see that there's other improvements that are proposed in the Hunters Branch area. Along Nutley Street, you'll see that there is a major paved trail proposed there, and then also along the north side of Route 29 and the north side of Route 50, a little bit further south of the Hunters Branch site. And then this one also has additional guidance there in that shaded out area, which is, again, the Vienna Transit Station area, which Hunters Branch is in. So again, it's the Trails Plan has this goal of creating a safe and connected network of trails that span across the county and provide safe and easy access to different areas and points of interest. Okay, so moving into the study intersections that were looked at for this particular CTA. So we had 7 different intersections that we consider study intersections, which are ones that we looked at more heavily given their proximity to the site. So the first one that we looked at was Nutley Street and Saintsbury Drive and Swanee Lane. So that's just north of the Hunters Branch site and just south of the interchange with I-66. The next one, number 2 there on the map, is Nutley Street and Hermosa Drive. So the site can be accessed from that point. And then the next one is Route 29 and Vaden Drive a little bit to the west, and then Route 29 and Hunters Glenway, which is also one of the main points used to access this site here. And then number 5 is Route 29 and Nutley Street. And then we also looked at Route 29 and Ellenwood Drive and Hunter Road. And then finally, number 7 is down on to the south of the Hunters Branch site, and that is Route 50 and Nutley Street. Okay, so moving into some of the other specifics of the metrics and how the analysis is done. So one of the things that we're looking at is what we call pedestrian level of comfort, and we sometimes abbreviate that to PLOC. So what we're looking at with PLOC is it's a way to measure what the perceived level of comfort is for pedestrians that are using trails and shared use paths and those type of active transportation facilities. So there's scoring tables that look at a variety of different factors, and these pathways are using those variables to get this score. So it's ranked 1 through 5, with 5 being the least comfortable for pedestrians and 1 being the most comfortable. So you'll see on the legend here, 5 actually indicates that there's no sidewalk or no crosswalk if it's at an intersection. So that's a total lack of any sort of facility there. And then 4 is an existing facility that would be uncomfortable. You can see then it moves to 3 as a somewhat comfortable, and then 2 is comfortable, and then 1 would be the most desirable and the most comfortable for pedestrians. So in terms of what that looks like with the comfort, that's going to be a wider facility. So maybe it's a 10-foot wide shared use path. You might have a large buffer that's either landscaped or has some sort of plantings there. Maybe it's a grass buffer that's providing some distance between where the cars are in the travel lanes and then where the pedestrians are on the pathway. And then there can also be other amenities like street trees that make it more pleasant and more enjoyable for pedestrians to use that facility and walk along that segment of a roadway. And then there's also metrics that go into the crosswalks themselves at intersections. So things like a refuge island in the median can make that a better facility for people to cross at, as opposed to just having to cross a high number of lanes without anywhere to stop in the middle of the road. So in terms of what we're looking for at the county, we generally want to see PLOC scores of 1 or 2. So that indicates facilities that are going to be more comfortable for pedestrians to use. And it's going to be places where people are going to feel that they can go out and can walk and won't be, right up along the road and right next to a lot of traffic or high volumes or high speeds, things like that. So that's what we're looking for in terms of facilities. So just to kind of zoom in on the Hunters Branch site here, you can see that there are a number of segments that do not have any facility there, and there's also places where there's a lack of a crosswalk. And the best example of that is probably the western leg of the Route 29 and Nutley Street intersection there. So you can see that's marked out in black because there's no crosswalk there at all. Now, one of the other things that you'll notice is the frontages along Nutley Street and Route 29 are also shown to be uncomfortable. And again, that's mostly due to the width of the pathway and then also the small buffer between where the roadway is and then where the pedestrian is. Overall, there's some deficiencies here in the pedestrian network. You can see there's these gaps here where you don't have any sort of sidewalk or pathway, and then there's other areas where you might have a pathway, but it's not a comfortable facility for people to use, and it's not considered something that has a good PLOC score. Okay, so moving into bike level of traffic stress. So much like PLOC, this is very similar. It's a measure of the level of stress that cyclists are going to experience on a given segment of the roadway. So the scoring is kind of the same general premise as PLOC, where you have these different variables and factors that go into the scoring. So again, if there's a roadway like Nutley Street or Route 29 that has high traffic volumes and high speeds, that's going to be considered a BLTS 4, which would be something that's high stress and is suitable only for very experienced cyclists. And you can see as you move through from 4 descending down to 1 that the facility becomes more comfortable and it also becomes usable for a greater number of people. And you can see there BLTS 1 is considered very low stress, and that would be suitable for families, including children, to use that facility. So that's going to be somewhere where you're separated away from the vehicular traffic, and it's going to be just an overall safer facility. So again, in terms of what the county is looking for, that would be BLTS scores of 1 or 2, especially in these areas like the Vienna transit station area where you have a lot of pedestrians and cyclists that are accessing different points of interest, whether that be the Pan Am Shopping Center or the metro station or things that are around this area here at the intersection of Route 29 and Nutley Street. And you can see that there's some deficiencies in the network again along those busier roadways. But you can see other facilities like Vaden Drive tend to be more comfortable and have lower levels of stress for cyclists using that segment of the road. Okay, so moving into transit now. So there are a number of different bus stops that are located in the area, and these stops range from just something such as a simple sign indicating what the bus route is that's going to come there, and then there's generally a timetable included with that as well on the sign pole. And then you can see on the other end, you've got more elaborate bus stops that have a full shelter with a covering, so that's a place that somebody can stand if there's inclement weather. Some of them also have seating, trash cans, things of that nature as well that make it a more enjoyable experience if you are waiting for the bus. So in terms of the service that's provided around the Hunters Branch site, we have the Fairfax Connector buses, there's Q, and then there's also Metrobus, which is operated by WMATA. So we have those 3 different bus systems that are operating in the vicinity of the Hunters Branch site. And this just gives you a snapshot of what some of those different stations and shelters look like. Then there's also additional bus stops located at the Vienna Metro rail station. So most of these are covered. There is some seating available here. And then again, drops folks off right there at the Metro rail stations. If they're using the bus, they can connect from either the connector, Q, or Metro bus, and then get on Metro rail and take that wherever they're heading to. Okay, so moving on to the transportation recommendations. So these were really developed after analyzing what we saw with the existing conditions and trying to improve on those deficiencies, especially with the bike and pedestrian network there at Hunters Branch. So one of the first things is that new development should provide well-landscaped, active streetscapes with street trees and plazas that link the site to the surrounding community, nearby transit facilities, and other destinations. So again, this is thinking about how do people move around the space and what sort of facilities are out there. So we want to be providing good facilities for people to get to wherever they're trying to go in the area. And then the second one ties into that as well. Missing sidewalk segments in the vicinity should be addressed, including on Hunters Glen Way and Hunters Branch Road. So again, this is just trying to make a more complete and connected network where we avoid having gaps in sidewalk coverage, because that would require people that are using those facilities to either walk in the street or on the grass, which then brings up additional safety concerns. So we want to make sure that we're providing those facilities and providing them consistently so that there's a connected network of that. So then moving into the next one, a minimum 10-foot wide shared use path with buffers along the site frontages on Nutley Street and Route 29, or equally comfortable low stress facilities should be provided. So this is aimed at improving the pedestrian level of comfort scores along those frontages there on the west side of Nutley Street and then on the north side of 29 adjacent to the site. And then the next one is a reduction in the number and or width of travel lanes on eastbound Hermosa Drive at Nutley Street to the extent feasible in order to create a shorter crossing distance for pedestrians. So again, that's looking at what does the crosswalk look like and then trying to address some of the safety concerns there for pedestrians that are crossing at Hunter or Hermosa Drive. The next one is pedestrian crossings on all four legs of the intersection at Route 29 and Nutley Street. Additional features such as high visibility markings, leading pedestrian intervals, and median refuge islands should be provided to promote the safety of active transportation users in the crossings. And just for a little bit of context, a high visibility marking is that kind of striping that you see on the road for crosswalks as opposed to just the two parallel lines. So it's something that provides drivers with a higher level of visibility too, so that they can see that there's a crosswalk here where pedestrians may be crossing. And the reason that we want to try to provide crosswalks on all the legs is that if you're trying to go across the street on 29 and then cross on Nutley, you're having to do these extra maneuvers. So if there's a leg there that doesn't have a crosswalk, you're kind of going around and having to wait for a longer time. So this way it provides that more direct connection if you're already on the west side of Nutley Street and you just want to get across Route 29. And then the next one is a reconfigured northern leg of the intersection of Hunters Glen Way at Route 29 to allow for safer pedestrian and bicycle crossings and easier access to and from the site. Slip lanes should be discouraged, and the northern leg of the intersection should be made as compact as possible. So again, this one is addressing some of the safety concerns there where you have these slip lanes and the splitter islands at Hunters Glen Way. So this is trying to improve both the vehicular flow of things and then also address those concerns for cyclists and pedestrians. Wayfinding signage along routes to connect to public infrastructure. So that's just telling people what are the points of interest that are nearby and how do I get to them from where I am right now. And then the last one deals with transit. So transit stops should be provided, which includes a transit pad, seating, and shelter, in addition to identifying signage appropriate to the stop. So those are the recommendations that were made in the staff report as far as transportation goes. And the goal of those is just to really improve the conditions for a variety of different areas around Hunter's Branch and make things more comfortable for everybody, and then just provide these additional connections where they're lacking, whether that's a sidewalk segment that's lacking or a crosswalk. Okay, so I'm happy to take any questions if there's anything that you'd like to know more about, or if anybody would like me to go back to any of the slides. I'm happy to answer any questions about the analysis.
Kyle, I think at this point, I will finish off with the rest of the plan text recommendations, and then we'll do the Q&A after that.
Okay, that works for me. Sure
So,
thing.
yep. Okay. Okay, so for the rest of the recommendations from the staff report, we start with the land use recommendations, and this would be for an option for residential mixed use up to a 1.31 floor area ratio. This would be up to the 800 multifamily residential unit option shown in option A. Um, we're recommending this just again because it's more compatible with the overall comprehensive plan vision for the TSA, and if a different developer, if this development does not get pursued, the current development, then somebody else could come in and do this, but it does not preclude what the current developer is pursuing in their rezoning application. Um, Stacked townhomes may be may be provided with a multifamily use. Activated ground floor uses with a minimum of a 1,700 square feet of retail, restaurant, or personal service use, and a minimum of 5,000 square feet of general non-residential uses, and that the minimum 1,700 square feet of retail or personal service use be provided in a permanent building integrated with either the multifamily building and or the existing parking garage. Any additional amount of retail or personal service may be provided in temporary structures, but the 1,700 must be in a permanent structure. Pedestrian and bicycle focused design, active streetscapes. I'm not going to repeat a lot of the transportation recommendations that Kyle just went over, but you can see those here. Um, for parks, again, publicly accessible parks per the urban parks framework in the comprehensive plan. Um, New development should avoid, again, the resource protection area, floodplain, and environmental quality corridor on the eastern part of the site. Stormwater quality and quantity management to good forested conditions to the extent feasible, and removal of invasive species, and finally, the Phase 2 architectural survey mentioned before. Just for timing here, so again, this is the second community meeting that we've held on this project tonight. The next steps are the Planning Commission public hearing on March 12th, and then the Board of Supervisors public hearing on May 13th. And again, we had already published our staff report on the 19th. Okay, so why don't we open it up to discussion? And if you please, again, raise your hands, use the raise your hand function, and then we'll try to answer your questions in order if as well as we can.
Jimmy, go ahead.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Great. I apologize for my technology here.
No
I,
problem.
I've lived at the Hunters Branch condominiums, and I was a past president for 5 years. And I've lived here for over 2 decades. And so I've got a couple of questions, particularly for Kyle, Kelly, and transportation. Two aspects. One is the Nutley, I should say, Nutley and 29. Adding that crosswalk there, it's extremely dangerous area to cross, and there needs to be some sort of mechanisms to slow the traffic down that area. I don't know anybody in this area who walks there to the Pan Am Shopping Center anymore, unless they absolutely are desperate. Almost everybody here drives there because it's just so dangerous of a crosswalk area, and I think you guys recognize that. And I don't see a way of making that more friendly by just adding another crosswalk, to be very candid with you. No offense. So unless you have some sort of calming mechanisms that slow the traffic down, because I've literally been T-boned at those intersections because people just fly through that area. And people are also crossing, as you know, across Route 29 in front of semi trucks, basically, from especially where the petroleum area is at, and they're doing the gas runs and stuff. So it's an extremely dangerous area for a crossing. Second phase, so I'd like to hear a little bit more about calming efforts in that area because it'd be a great way to bridge that corner area to the Pan Am Shopping Center area because it's a great idea because we didn't get the real estate development that we were promised many years ago. It got changed in developments over the years. I've been here for 25 years, so I can speak to that. Second part is the pedestrian walking, and that is over to the metro area. A lot of people walk in the street as they get to the north end and I can tell you exactly where that's at. It's the Hunter Glen Way as they go up to St. Mary's Drive. And what they typically will do is literally walk in that street area, and people who live in those condos come out of the Deer Hollow Way area, or actually the pedestrians cut through the driving lanes of the Deer Hollow Way area to cut across into our property and to cut through a fence that's now got a broken fence to the metro. And it's not ADA compliant and all that other stuff. And there's been a lot of near misses because there is no sidewalk for that area because it's car developed basically for a car. So I'd like to hear more about how you plan to deal with the walking aspect as well. So those are the two parts of the questions, and I'll be quiet for the rest of it. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I guess I'll start off with the Route 29 and Nutley Street intersection. So for that one, we do recognize that there are a lot of challenges with adding that fourth leg of the crosswalk, and one of them comes to the sight distance there and the traffic that's heading to the east on Route 29. There's the sight distance issue if you're making that right turn on red to turn south onto Nutley Street. So that's part of the reason that the stop bar is where it is. And if this crosswalk were to be implemented, there would probably have to be some sort of movement of the stop bar further back to incorporate that. Now, I guess in terms of the speed and traffic volumes, I would say that's kind of the trickier aspect of things because obviously Route 29 and Nutley Street 2 are very heavily traveled roads with high speeds. So that's one of those challenges where, how do you make that a safe environment for a pedestrian to cross or a place that people feel comfortable crossing when you've got all this traffic on Route 29 and then also turning traffic on Nutley Street and things of that nature. So the idea here behind this is more just to provide that option to people that do need to cross because there are certain people in the community that maybe don't have access to a car or can't drive for whatever reason that do still need to get across Route 29, and we don't want to preclude that. Now, if it is implemented, we want to make sure it's done in a safe way. We want to provide facilities that pedestrians can use and feel like their safety is being taken into account. So there would be a lot of considerations on the kind of design side of things when we actually implemented that facility to make sure that it's going to be placed in such a way that drivers know that there's a crosswalk there and it's very clearly marked and there's no sight distance issues. So I do understand that there are some challenges, which is kind of the configuration of the intersection, and that's something that will be taken into account if that were to be constructed in the future. And then I guess the other half kind of relating to people walking up towards the Vienna metro station. So again, if there are gaps in the sidewalk network or places where there's no facility provided, we do want to address those and make sure that people have that option to be on a safe facility instead of having to walk in the street. And then also, again, that's somewhere where we would like to have people driving slowly since you do have a lot of pedestrian activity of people coming to and from the metro. So thinking about the safety aspect, that is definitely an area where we'd like to see an improvement and more pedestrian facilities implemented to allow people to get up to and from the metro in a safe and easy way that feels like it's designed for pedestrians and not just vehicles. Did that answer your two questions?
You gave an answer and I appreciate it, but it's still a dangerous intersection. I didn't hear how you're resolving it other than putting a sidewalk down and also with the pedestrian crossing over into the 100 foot trail. But I respect your position. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Looks like we have a couple more hands, Aaron.
Yeah, I think next up was Rita.
Yes. So this is Al in lieu of Rita. She stepped away. First of all, thank you for an extremely comprehensive overview. Excellent presentations by Aaron and Kyle. So much appreciated. Where does the lighting, so whether along sidewalks or roadways, that corner at night is pretty dark. It doesn't seem to be very well lit. So does that get incorporated into this overall comprehensive plan? Thank you.
So street lights, that is actually well, there are a couple ways that can happen. It can happen through the developer, proffering to do that, but that would be a cost to them to construct those, and they would be after construction. They would be turned over to either Dominion Power or there's another company, I forget the name now, that the county works with, but the county would provide the funds to maintain the streetlights in the future. If we can't get it through the development process. There is I believe through the Department of Public Works, there's a petition that surrounding property owners would have to sign, and I don't know exactly how that works, but there may be I don't. If you go to their website, they say that right now in the capital improvements program, there is not funding for installing new streetlights around the county. So that would either have to come possibly from other county sources, or the money would have to be raised in some other way. But that would, again, this is something that the Department of Public Works would work with developers to provide primarily.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Next up, we had Steve. Steve, go ahead.
Give my ignorance, a lot of the presentation has been said that it's a recommendation. To what extent does this body have authority over the developers, and what's going to make them hold up to any of these recommendations?
So yeah, so we're kind of a two stages of the development process here. The comprehensive plan again sets down the vision for the future, the recommendations that are, well, they're pretty specific as you can see, but they are more general in terms of, again, the land use, the density, intensity, and other important considerations. And then when we get to the next stage of the process, which is the rezoning application, and that's under review at this moment as well. But will establish all of the agreements between the developer and the county to implement in detail everything that the plan text or recommendations is laying out for the goals here.
So they can't really circumvent kind of what you guys are recommending.
So what we're providing are recommendations. And so when the developer comes in with their rezoning and it's time to review the comprehensive plan, the first thing that we look at is the language that we're drafting, assuming it gets adopted by the Board of Supervisors, of course. So it is a recommendation, so it's general in nature. There's no legal requirement that they have to, but it is in Fairfax County. It's a practice that the Board of Supervisors and the Planning Commission take it very seriously, and that they use this as a rationale for reviewing any land use change. So we take it very seriously, which is part of why we're doing this tonight. But they are recommendations; they're not law like the zoning is.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I believe is this Linda?
Yes, it is, Aaron.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Appreciate all of the concerns about pedestrians and looking at the many problems that we certainly have around this area. But one of the things that struck me as missing is the issue of lighting. There really is not much of any street lighting along that western side of Nutley. Well, not too much on the eastern side either. And this is hazardous. Pedestrians can't see that well where they're walking. Drivers cannot see where pedestrians are either. And we have asked for lighting many times over the years, but this may be our last chance. We would like to see a much better lit route along there for pedestrians.
Yeah, thank you for that, Linda. Much appreciated. And I think both of them. I know your name's not Rita, but I'm hearing your question about that as well. It sounds like that is a site priority. So what I would do, and we can bring this to Commissioner Hancock, just this issue about lighting. We don't have it prioritized specifically in the text of the amendment. It is obviously supported by our countywide policies regarding transit-oriented development and residential use. So I think that if there is interest in this, I think this is something that we could take back to the Planning Commission and raise as a community priority for further consideration as site-specific text.
I really think it's a safety issue here. And it has been for a long time, particularly if you've given the number of trucks that are barreling through on Nutley. And it is dark, very dark. There's even a bus stop over there. In the dark, you can't even see the sign. We need some help with it, please.
Well, thank you for pointing that out for both of you. Appreciate it.
And then S is next.
Hi, am I getting there?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks. Sorry, I was having some trouble finding things before. Want to start by commending some language that I saw in the staff report was very encouraging. It says that staff has not found the updated analysis and recommendations by the applicant to be acceptable. So it was very heartening to see that. And then later on page 25, it says staff has recommended transportation plan text that would achieve the goals and policies. So I was wondering if you could take us through the math. Why is it that the staff recommendation text will quote unquote achieve the goals where the nominators wouldn't? And I agree the nominators wouldn't based on what I saw in their transportation report. But how can we see the math to show that what the staff is recommending will actually work? And I asked that in light of slide 6, which I thought was very good language also, said transportation improvements are recommendations, but are not necessarily funded. So if you're recommending improvements and recommending text on transportation, but there's no funding to make improvements, why should this go forward? Can we look at the data and the math and see, basically like my third grade teacher would say, show your work. What data is this based on? Thank you.
Yeah, so for the comprehensive transportation analysis that we did, so we looked at what the applicant and the consultant submitted to us and what they looked at with the existing conditions and then the current comprehensive plan and the proposed development. And what we saw was that there are existing deficiencies in the network that are currently there right now for both cyclists and pedestrians. And really what our goal is to try to address those deficiencies. So everything that we recommended was done after reviewing and doing the analysis of the CTA that was submitted to us, and that was done through multiple iterations. So we did have meetings and discussions with the applicant and their consultant to kind of work through those things. And really at the end, what it comes down to is us wanting to improve the PLOC and BLTS scores and then see better facilities along those frontages of 29 and Nutley, which again, those are all recommendations that were based off of what we saw in the analysis. So the analysis pointed out you've got these deficiencies, you have these areas that don't have good connectivity, you have poor PLOC and BLTS scores in certain areas, you've got missing crosswalk segments. So all of that taken together is what we used to make these transportation recommendations, which we're hoping will provide that extra and safer connectivity that doesn't currently exist.
But I'm also asking about daily car trips. And right now, Nutley Street is choked unto death. And as I understand it, you're talking about at least 3,000 plus extra daily car trips. And there's talk about widening certain roads and adding extra lanes and things like that. But again, if these things aren't funded, kind of what's the point? So where can we see the math about the car trips, and where is the proof, the evidence that Nutley Street and 29 and 50 can handle it?
Yeah, so I guess to start off with the recommendations that are in the comprehensive plan. So it does show in the current comprehensive plan that both US 29, Route 29 and Nutley and Route 50, not Nutley Street, Route 50 are going to be widened to 6 lanes in the plan. But again, there's no funding for that and there's no timeline. That's just the recommendation. So as long as that recommendation stays in the transportation plan, that will continue to be what is the future vision for that corridor. Now, if that's something that the Board of Supervisors wants to change in the future, they can always go down that route. Or if they want to move it up in priority, they can do that too. And we've seen other corridors like Route 29 further west out towards the Centerville area that currently is being widened. So it really depends on the priorities there in terms of whether that does or does not get implemented or gets added or removed. So it is a living document here with the comprehensive plan, so things can be added, things can be taken out based off of what the needs are for the county. So that's kind of that aspect of things there. in terms of what those facilities look like today and then what we want to get it to in the future. Now, to address the traffic concerns, I think everybody's aware that the study intersection number 5, which is Route 29 and Nutley Street, does see congestion during both the AM and the PM peak hours. And what I mean by that is the AM peak hours, that's the busiest time in the morning, and then PM peak hour is the busiest time in the afternoon in terms of the total number of cars that are passing through that intersection. So that was noted in the transportation analysis that was done. So we saw that there's already this existing problem there, especially at that intersection with Route 29 and Nutley Street. And then we also saw that that is going to continue into the future. Now, we did see that if you implement that widening, it does slightly improve the situation there, but it doesn't necessarily get rid of all the traffic concerns. So that's one of those things where we did look at what the existing condition is, how the site adds to that, which again, it's already an issue there right now in terms of just the congestion and delay at that intersection. So yeah, that was something that was looked at, and we did look at what it would be in the future, both with and without the comprehensive plan recommendations that show that widening on 29 from 4 lanes to 6 lanes.
So what I'm hearing is the staff recommendation is to make it worse.
Well,
and how am I wrong?
Yeah. So what's proposed in the comprehensive plan would stay in there for right now. So that 6-lane recommendation is still there. Now, again, there's not a timeline associated with that, but it will remain in the plan. So nothing that was done in this analysis would change that. So that would stay there. And again, that would slightly improve the situation there at that intersection.
And if I'm not mistaken, there's been proposals to widen 29 for something like 30 years, and it hasn't happened. So a wish and a prayer doesn't sound like a plan to me. I'm sorry. What am I missing?
Yeah, and again, with those type of things, it's all about the priorities there and how that gets funded. So funding is always kind of the big issue. Tom, I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
Yeah, I was just going to add that when we assess a comprehensive plan amendment, we look at alternative futures. We look at what the future would look like with the office buildings that exist today, and we look at the future with the residential. And the trip generation actually shows that it's pretty trip neutral. It's actually a anticipated reduction in trips. Now we're looking 20 years out. When we get to the next step with the zoning, that's when there's a much closer look at the existing deficiencies, and more mitigations would be proffered at that point. But from a 20+ year comp plan horizon, the residential concept actually is pretty trip neutral with the existing land use, which is the office.
What my read shows about 3,200 more car trips a day. Is that relatively neutral? It doesn't sound neutral to me.
No, the 3,200 for option B, you have to compare that to the existing plan, which is 2,967. So there's an increase of about 309 daily trips, and there's actually reductions in the AM and PM peaks. The residential, we're not at the comp plan stage. We don't compare to existing. We compare to the alternative future, which is the office in 2045 or 2050 type of time frame. At the next step with the rezoning, that's when they look at the trip impact versus the existing conditions. So I think that's where you would dig a little bit deeper and determine what types of shorter term improvements are necessary. The comp plan assessment is a 20+ year horizon. So admittedly, we're looking far out into the future. And then when the rezoning comes, that's when the closer look at the shorter term impacts are assessed.
Aaron, I'm looking through the chat, and Brian had a question about the overall timeline for what's to come in the future. So I added the response regarding the kind of near-term stuff, which is the hearings for the plan amendment. So this item is going to go to the Planning Commission for their recommendation, in 2 weeks. So I believe it's on March the 12th, if I'm not mistaken.
March 12th, yes.
Thank you. And then to the Board of Supervisors, currently scheduled for May the 13th. In terms of the next steps after that, if the amendment does get adopted, there is a rezoning application that's running concurrently with this, and that would most likely go to hearings in the summer or the fall. I think we have representatives from the nominator and the developer. They're on the call. I don't know if either Mike or Scott, if y'all are able to, provide kind of an anticipated timeline for, assuming that the plan amendment and the rezoning are approved, what would we be looking at in terms of site plan, construction, occupancy, and that sort of thing?
Sure. This is Scott Adams, land use attorney with McGuire Woods, and along with my colleague Mike Van Atta, we represent the nominator and the developer. So I guess on the timeline for the site plan and actual construction, we would look to move forward with the site plan shortly after the rezoning is approved. That's about a 12-month process to get through with Fairfax County, and then you've got probably a 2-year construction timeline if we were to go straight from site plan into construction, which is the plan at this point.
Thank you for that, Scott. Then Brian also had a question. What will happen with the large office complex on the south side of 29 and west side of Nutley? Brian, if you're on the call, could you clarify on the south side of 29?
Yeah, no, I think it's the north side.
Oh, okay.
It's across from Walgreens. I think there was some responses in the chat about that's where some of the housing units would go and probably some of the retail spaces.
That's correct. Yeah. So with this amendment, this is an option for redevelopment of that site of the 2 office buildings that are here.
Right. Thank you.
Sure, no problem. And I will just note Monica had a question about the student generation, and which option was evaluated. So Monica, just to answer your question, we evaluate. When we have 2 different options, we always evaluate the more intense option for impact. And so we did that in this instance, which was the 800 residential units that yielded, I believe, about 86 total students. And so the option B, which is the option that's being pursued by the nominator with the rezoning, would be substantially less in terms of student generation. So let's see if there's some other questions, but I know we also have some hands raised. So Steve, did you want to ask your question?
Yeah, so sorry, this is for the nominator. Just curious if option B is 100% settled, or is there a possibility that it's going to be option A?
At this point, the only option that we've included in the rezoning is option B, for either townhouses or stacked townhouses. So we're not pursuing the all multifamily option.
Thank you.
And then I know your name's not Rita, but I forgot your name.
It's Al.
There you go. All right, sorry about that.
Just a clarification from Mr. Adams. So he alluded to 12 months and then 2 years. Can you speculate, if it all goes as wanted, what month or year that would be, the construction starting?
Make me do some math on the fly. Was the Saturday Night Live skit? I was told there would be no math. So if we get approved in, call it, May or June of this year, so it'd be June of 2026 for the site plan, and then sort of 2 years after that would be June of 2028. And those are rough timelines, but that's kind of the high level estimate.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Then Monica had a question, total number of townhomes that were included. And thank you, Aaron. Yeah, the total number of townhouses that's included in the option B is 76 stacked townhouses.
Okay, are there any other questions? Let me put up my contact. I put the project site URL in the chat, so you can go back to that. You can look at the staff report there and look at the past community meeting as well. And let me see here. Okay. And here's my contact information again. You can contact me directly as well.
And then real quick, Brian had a question in the chat. Will there be future meetings like this for updates? Brian, this is the last anticipated community meeting that we have on the plan amendment before the public hearings. So the next step for this is on March the 12th. That'll be the next community. Well, it's not a community meeting. That's the next meeting that we have on this, which is with the Fairfax County Planning Commission. And that'll be a public hearing where anybody that wants to can testify, provide comments, ask questions about the proposal, the plan amendment. So if you're interested in participating, kind of getting an update, that'd be a good thing to attend. And then would also encourage you to take a look at the board hearing, which is where the Board of Supervisors makes a decision about whether or not to adopt the plan amendment. There's also public hearings that would accompany the rezoning application should it move forward after the plan amendment.
Let me jump in on that if that's okay, Graham. Want to thank you for that, Supervisor Palchik here. Again, thank you all for joining us tonight. Always good to see supervisors amidst as well. And to that point, yes, please. Well, our office is just down the street at the Jim Scott Community Center. I will put in my email here in case you don't have it. It's pretty straightforward, Providence at fairfaxcounty.gov. And as Graham mentioned, it's a little bit of a confusing process because this is just the comprehensive plan piece of it, which is kind of the guidelines, longer term guidelines. And he's given you the dates for that. Going to the planning commission, should that pass, would come to us. And then from there, and you've heard from the applicant's representatives, they are planning to submit the rezoning. And that's really when we get into the more granular details, into the proffers, into all of the specifics, things like the lighting and the transportation and the other improvements to the site. So this is my first round of doing both of these with many applications. I think we're learning through it, but very much appreciate those of you who've already given a lot of feedback, and those of you who continue to share this back with your communities. That's my other big ask is, if your neighbors or your association have not been aware or received this, please let them know. Please share it with them, share the website, and also feel free to have them share my email. And if you do not receive the Palchik post, we send out every couple of weeks. Please do go to my website to sign up for that. So happy to meet with you, have a chat, and also just very much appreciate all of you helping us make sure your community is aware and has their questions answered through this process. So thank you. And before I log off, just thank you so much to Aaron, Kyle, and all the staff who've worked very, very hard on this.
Okay. Last questions? No? All right. Well, thank you all for attending tonight. And make sure, again, as Graham said, to stay tuned for the Planning Commission public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you all for attending. Really appreciate it. Have a good night.